are these people?
Um, Colin, you
Yeah,
brought something you wanted to talk about.
yeah. Just 1 second while I write Loki on our.
No
We are
worries.
making a wish list of guests that we'd like to have on, so I'm going to add Loki
Yep.
to um our list. So hopefully, yeah, we'll reach out. I know. Thank you a lot. A few of you guys said in chat, definitely try and get him on. We'll definitely look into that. Or if you
Yep.
guys any connections, feel free to tag
Yeah.
him us
Yep.
too. Um, but I think in the meantime, I definitely should listen to his music as well. So
Yeah. We'll tag him in
uh,
the clip too. That's a good move as well. But
yeah. But
um,
anyway, speaking of tagging, want to tag Margaret Kimberley to this as well. So as many of you know, if you live in the US, Monday was Juneteenth, which is or Freedom Day. So it's a celebration in the country that became a national holiday 2 years ago, in celebration of um, the emancipation of slaves. Finally, in Texas, was among the last places to fully, emancipate slaves back in the day. So it was a regional holiday in Texas and in many places throughout the South, but then it's grown more in, more prominence, especially in African American culture. And I think it definitely came more to a head in 2020 in light of George Floyd. We'll get more into that because I think there are implications of that in terms of why it's a national holiday now. But Margaret Kimberley, and I was kind of, before I saw this article over on Monday, actually, I kind of wanted to talk about this in relation to another topic, but I wasn't sure. But then I saw this article, and then like her, Sammy, and I were kind of in a thread regarding this article, and I thought it might be worth looking at it a little bit, especially for people who may not be familiar with Juneteenth. So,
hmm.
so shout out to Margaret Kimberley. She's an editor for the Black Agenda Report. As I said, she wrote this article last year, but I think it's very poignant now to a lot of the discussion that was had on Twitter over the weekend regarding Juneteenth. So we're definitely going to read about it, and then we are definitely going to dissect this a little more in terms to a squad member, surprisingly. Um, so let me play. I will play catch up. Actually, there
Okay.
we
There you
go.
go.
So, and actually, you probably need to zoom in for me a little bit because
Yeah,
it
I'll have
is
to play.
small. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could actually zoom out a little bit.
I wish I could. Um.
Zoom out. Yeah, that's fine. I can actually read that. Thank you. All right. So Margaret Kimberley wrote, Juneteenth was a people's holiday with deep meaning for the descendants of enslaved people. But the declaration of an official federal holiday has turned it into an opportunity for corporate exploiters and cynical politicians to show pretend concern for Black people. At best, Juneteenth provides a history lesson and an opportunity for much needed political education. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality for personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection hereforto existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. General Order Number 3, June 19th, 1865. The fact that members of the United States Senate voted ununanimously to make Juneteenth a federal holiday proved that the commemoration is of no political value, turning what was a people's celebration into an occasion for opportunism and window dressing has actually damaged the cause for Black liberation and the understanding of history. We're going to get more into that after this article, though.
Okay.
Um,
I
on
can
June
follow you.
19th, 18, sorry. On June 19th, zoom out actually.
I mean, I can follow
Yeah.
you, but whatever.
Yeah, thank you. I can actually read that a little bit if I sit a little close. There we go. That's actually better. Um, on June 19th, 1865, Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, and issued a General Order Free, a declaration that slavery had ended. The fact that this event occurred 2 months after the Civil War ended took on an understandable mythical quality, including a belief that the news had been deliberately cut from enslaved people or that the person carrying the message had been killed. In reality, enslaved Texans were well aware that the war had ended, but they also knew that the absence of federal troops who could enforce the law make any legalities mute. They knew better than anyone else that the people who forced them to labor without compensation would not end their system unless they were forced to do so. Juneteenth was widely celebrated in Texas and other southern states, while the rest of the country was largely unaware of their special commemoration. Of course, the day had meaning to those descended from the enslaved in those regions, and they gave that day significance in their own way. Unfortunately, Juneteenth came to be more widely known, and now the serious and the scoundrels alike lay claim to what should be an important occasion. The government imprimatur has given way to foolishness, insult, and confusing reactions. A children's museum was condemned for serving a Juneteenth watermelon salad. The stereotypical connection of Black people with watermelon was lost on an institution committed to cultural education. Not to be outdone, Walmart sold Juneteenth ice cream, which, like the watermelon salad, was quickly removed after protests. Then again, the business of America is business. No one should be surprised that what should be a solemn remembrance is now commodified. But anger about ice cream and watermelon is misplaced. Corporations, avaricious banks, and cynical politicians are all claiming to be Juneteenth believers. Of course, they will all use Juneteenth to pretend they aren't what they actually are, and that is a sign that Juneteenth is of itself problematic. What exactly is being celebrated on June 19th? Juneteenth could be a history lesson which explained that Abraham Lincoln was not the great emancipator. Everyone should note that the Emancipation Proclamation freed enslaved people only in states like Texas, which were in rebellion against the federal government, but which were safely able to continue the peculiar institution until they were forced to end it. Lincoln tied emancipation to colonization, the plan to send Black people out of the country, and he actually established one such colony in Haiti. Did you know that, Reef?
Yes, I did. At least the Haiti part.
Yeah. The Civil War is rarely taught properly. The well-documented struggle for liberation is left out of the story. The enslaved people who fled to Union lines whenever they were forced Lincoln to state that ending slavery was the object of the conflict. He only reluctantly agreed to establish the United States colored troops, who were more invested in victory than any group in the country. Of course, he never gave up on his dream of an all-white country. Shortly before his assassination, he still expressed a desire to send Black people away and to compensate the Confederacy for its lost free labor. Instead of pointing out these well-documented facts, Juneteenth is an amorphous celebration of Black people. The best it can accomplish is to point out that freedom itself is never amorphous in this country. Enslavement was soon followed by lynch law terrorism, the sharecropping system, and the convict leasing system. Mass Black incarceration at the end of the 20th century brought about a new system of free labor, as vicious as that in the Jim Crow South. The General Order itself shows the illusionary nature of freedom for Black people. It warned the newly freed not to collect at military posts and not to be idle. Of course, they were forced to work hard for nothing. An allowance for temporary idleness should have been permitted, but this directive is yet another reason for serious discussion and study. It is not surprising that Black people want validation, but that desire is all too often misplaced. Validation comes when the past is remembered correctly and when real victories are achieved. It was sad to witness people who thought Juneteenth ice cream would have been acceptable if it was sold by a Black-owned business. Of course, liberation won't come from Black capitalism either. Perhaps that is something to focus on instead of getting a day off from work while wishing that white people didn't get the same consideration. Juneteenth won unanimous approval in the Senate and only a handful of objections from Republicans in the House of Representatives. This widespread acceptance is actually proof that the effort was misguided. On the one hand, we are told to hate the likes of Republican leaders like Mitch McConnell, but suddenly celebrate when they toss a bone. When Joe Biden signed the law which made Juneteenth a federal holiday, his remarks were replete with platitudes about the sin of slavery, the redemption of American progress, the importance of HBCUs and home ownership, and just for good measure, a plea to be vaccinated against COVID. The laundry list of topics was further proof that a people's holiday has become meaningless. Juneteenth's only value is it becomes a day of serious study and political education. That progress can start with learning why Jim Crow Joe Biden received 90% of the Black vote, or why the 2020 rebellions after George Floyd's murder created a need for the state to placate Black people, if only symbolically. The Civil War is a perfect starting point for this practice. If there is a day off, it should be used wisely and well. In the future, all people's holidays should stay that way. Perhaps they should be kept secret so that commemorations aren't used to give legitimacy to bad actors. It is too late for Juneteenth, but the hard lesson can be the beginning of something far more valuable. Okay, so actually I'll go back a second. So quick history lesson from Margaret Kimberley, so shout out to her, but any thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, when this happened, when they announced this holiday, I felt the same, right? This is commodifying something that people don't necessarily understand, you know. But yes, like Margaret Kimberley hits it on the head here. So
yeah. And
you know,
it's kind of sad that unfortunately, depending on the state, many students may not learn about Juneteenth now because more often than not, most schools will be out by the time Juneteenth comes around in the year. And now even now we have a day off. So, and by that point, many schools are closed or in preparation of closing. So there's not going to be any, unless if you're a school that is committed to it, there's really not going to be any real talk in terms of the significance of Juneteenth, which I think in a lot of ways, a lot of school districts, well, I would say the powers that be would kind of prefer it that way. Because to actually talk about it in a real sense is to kind of talk about it in terms of what Margaret Kimberley has said here.
Yeah.
And we know that we can't have,
they're not going to
especially
teach that.
children know their true history in that regard.
God forbid.
No. So, but speaking of, confusion.
Confusion.
And
My
you
name
said
is Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk. And we haven't talked about him on the show.
Rarely.
Before,
Never had to.
Maybe, but I don't remember. At least it was insignificant. But he was like, you should be working today, not taking time off for a CRT inspired federal holiday that competes with July 4th. So
also wrong, and also wrong, and also wrong.
Right.
Like, yeah, and what's he doing on that day? Fucking around on Twitter? That's what he's doing? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, fuck you, Charlie Kirk.
So hold on. Oh, so actually there was a tweet. Actually, I think I might put it here. So he actually continues. If Juneteenth was really about emancipation, why not? September 22nd, 1862, when Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation.
Because Kirk.
No. Or January 1st, 1863, when the proclamation took effect.
Because that's not.
Or December 18th, 1865, with the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Don't forget, Charlie, that the 14th Amendment is still a thing. Because it's not about emancipation, which was one of America's great moral achievements. It's about creating a summertime, race-based competitor 2 weeks before July 4th, which should be the most unifying civic holiday on the calendar. So basically, you're butthurt that there are 2 Independence Days. That's basically what.
There are 2 Independence Days. Will Smith did both of them. Like,
unity.
That's what he wants.
Right. So Kathleen McKinley, not sure who she is, but she clapped back. For heaven's sake, it's been celebrated here in Texas for decades and in no way has kept the 4th of July from being celebrated by all Americans. And then he continues, context matters. Texas celebrated it culturally with a day to barbecue. Again, no. Even still, making it a Texas state holiday has an interesting story involving one of the most corrupt state lawmakers in Texas history. Regardless, the historical event happened in Texas, and one could argue it was fitting for that state to celebrate. The federal holiday was done by way of morally blackmail post George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, an organization with a plummeting approval rating fitting of its Marxist founders.
No,
sir.
Not Marxist founders. Relax.
We wish they were, but
right. We get that BLM was a psyop. We understand. Like, it doesn't mean the entire movement was bullshit. But okay.
Anyway, did you know that Joe Biden didn't tweet about Juneteenth until 2019? Did you also know that when it was declared a holiday, Gallup revealed that 60% of Americans knew little or nothing about it? Yes. You don't either.
Right.
But sure, let's create a federal holiday out of basically nothing because some angry Marxists told us to.
It's got as much point as fucking President's Day, like, which isn't on their birthdays.
But
like, it's somewhere in the middle of both presidents' birthdays. It's literally a fucking day we made up. Like, what do you mean, Kirk? The fuck you okay.
But you know what, though? I told you I was going to bring a treat for you. So here's the treat. Okay. So Dr. Darnell Scott basically retweeted this from Charlie Kirk back in 2020 when he said, Senate Republicans are introducing legislation to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Barack Obama and Joe Biden were in the White House for 8 years. Why didn't they ever do it?
You know what? That's
gotcha, bitch.
That's one of those.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
Oh, there's more. There's more. Okay.
Oh, there's more because here's I believe this was from Reuters actually. I didn't put it in the description, but this will be very short. 14 House Republicans voted against making Juneteenth a federal holiday. So if you go down, just 14.
Okay.
You would think that, but here's I'll actually reread it. But in a second, the House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed legislation Wednesday to establish Juneteenth National Independence Day, a federal holiday to commemorate the end of chattel slavery in the United States. The bill recognizes June 19th, 1865, the day when General Major Gordon Granger led soldiers to Galveston, Texas, to deliver the message that the Union had won the war and the ending of slavery would be enforced. While the Senate voted unanimously in favor of the holiday, right? 14 House members, all Republicans, right, voted against the bill. Many citing concerns over the name of the holiday and whether it conflates with the July 4th.
Yeah.
So basically, most Republicans voted for it.
Right.
And basically all Senate Republicans voted for it. Charlie Kirk. Probably not for the reasons, and I have my own thing on this in a minute.
Yeah.
But it gets even better.
Okay.
Trump pledges to make Juneteenth a federal holiday in bid of black voters.
Oh.
Gotcha, bitch! This was written in 2020.
Yes.
So President Donald Trump made a series of promises at a campaign event in Atlanta on Friday in a bid to woo black voters, including establishing Juneteenth, which commemorates the end of U.S. slavery as a federal holiday.
We're gonna make Juneteenth. It's gonna be the best. There's gonna be watermelon salad, barbecue, ice cream. It's gonna be fantastic.
So scroll down to the next on the side. Only Congress has the power to create a federal holiday, but Trump helped introduce a measure for lawmakers to pass. Calls to make Juneteenth, June 19th, a federal holiday grew louder this summer as Black Lives Matter protests swept throughout the country and many organizations gave their workers the day off. The day is already recognized by 47 states and the District of Columbia. In March, when Union soldiers arrived at Galveston, Texas, and shared the news that slavery was abolished.
Yep.
So, Kurt, you gonna say shit about Trump?
You say shit about your boy?
Who actually really in the process of making Juneteenth a thing?
Yep.
But you're gonna call out Biden now because he was the one that actually fulfilled the promise. But but all that to say, which goes to Margaret Kimberley's point. We're gonna get to Candace in a minute. Because she also said some shit. That the fact that pretty much every Republican voted for this shows that, to me, this is more an issue of lobbyists and the corporations who wanted this to be a thing.
Political culture war shit.
Political, right. And you said it actually when we were prepping, when I was prepping this on Monday. It's a way to kind of continue this pseudo fight in regards to culture war bullshit.
Yeah.
Without talking about the substance of it, as Margaret Kimberley just so eloquently did.
Most of them voted for it.
Right.
So,
probably not, and I'll be very fair to them, probably they didn't want to.
Yes.
But this was a way, the pressure was there given. Now think about that. All of this came out like post George Floyd.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the kind of thing that people would do? Like, let's go back to labor. Like, could you imagine if labor coalesced in a similar way that people came together and coalesced for the George Floyd? How much pressure we can make our politicians actually do some shit? Because they were able to do this in a year. They were able to make Juneteenth a holiday in 1 year.
Yeah.
But yet we can't coalesce to get a $15 million a 15 minimum wage.
Nope.
We can't coalesce for Medicare for all. Like, we just proved it right here that it is possible that you can act, and during a conservative government at that time, they were able to make these moves. This is the same thing regarding abortion. That happened under a conservative Supreme Court back in the 60s or 70s. I forgot the dates right now. So, you know, so it kind of shows the idea of, like, now granted, I don't particularly like this because I agree with Margaret Kimberley in the terms of this was just a crumb to throw at Black people in terms of feeling like we're actually getting something. Ooh, we got a holiday, you know, rather than talking about the substance of the significance of the holiday and what Black people actually want. So I'm going to get to that in a second from a surprise person. But hold on once. But we'll get there in a second. So Candace Owens actually said some shit. We just put this up. She called Juneteenth ghetto and made up. You know? Again, Candace, if
what does ghetto mean to you, Candace? Like, also, Candace, I doubt you've ever been in a ghetto in your fucking life. Like, are you gonna break a fucking nail doing that? You wouldn't do that. Like, ugh.
But this was, so this is our friend of the show, DJ No Nice. If you ever needed evidence showing America's racial division, the United States has 2 Independence Days. Worse yet, over half the country hates the idea of 2 Independence Days. Totally agree.
I could use a couple of days to eat hamburgers and hot dogs, you know?
Right.
Like,
but in this case, especially when it comes to Juneteenth, it's not about eating hot dogs and watermelon and all that other stuff. Or at least it could be, but it's a lot more.
It also shouldn't be. Yeah.
So, another friend of the show, Savvy, this was kind of my inspiration of actually doing this. Waiting for politicians to virtual signal about Juneteenth while continuing to fund police, poison Black communities with toxic chemicals, refuse reparations, and pass legislation for every group except Black people. Wait for it. And there was definitely plenty of that on Twitter on Monday.
Yep. Best we can do is your leaders in kente cloth, Collin. That's best we can do.
Right. So Margaret Kimberley responds, that's why I was opposed to turning this people's holiday into a state-sanctioned propaganda effort. We could still celebrate the way we should, but the genie is out of the bottle. So that's where she
posted her article we just read.
Her article. Yes. Savvy responded, excellent article. What exactly are people learning on Juneteenth? Right question. I responded, nothing. The powers that be have defanged the holiday in the way they defanged MLK and his legacy. This is remind me exactly of that. Yep. What I mean is, no one's talking about MLK in terms of his actual legacy, in terms of what he spoke about post I Have a Dream. Like, and we've talked about this on the show before, you know. But because similar stuff, because when he was assassinated, there's a lot of outrage about it. The government's like, okay, we need to appease these Black people. Let's make MLK a federal holiday. And I know like one Republican, what's his face? John McCain actually opposed making MLK Day a federal holiday. But it's a similar thing, you know, taking a very political figure or political stance in terms of Black liberation in this country. Well, and what the potential
immediately politicizing it,
politicizing it, and codifying it so that the true essence of what that person or that event actually stands for is nullified. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I said regarding that. This is exactly what Juneteenth